You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. A lot of people tell you how to keep your money. A lot of people tell you what to spend your money on, what not to spend your money on. We're here really more focused about how do we increase the delta between what you spend and what you make. And we're focused on the lever of pulling the one that you make a little bit more. So Travis Makes Money podcast. Today we're talking all things health and wellness with my new friend, Robbie Nowinski. Robbie is the founder and CEO of E+ROSE Wellness Company. It was created to provide communities with convenient, quick service, healthy options that are made with integrity and creativity. After spending years working with healthcare systems as a registered dietitian, Robbie realized just how many people were sick and hospitalized due primarily to poor nutrition. Of the strong belief that our food choices greatly impact our health and the desperate need for more nutrient-rich, quick service options, the solution of E+ROSE was born. They have several locations now across Nashville, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. I'm in Nashville, so I'm looking forward to trying some of it while I'm here in town. And if you're in Nashville or if you're in Atlanta, be sure to get out to an E+ROSE wellness location near you sometime soon and check it out. Robbie, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Travis. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of
really
course.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So you were a dietitian, but in the traditional kind of healthcare system.
That's right.
Talk to me about that. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. So I went to school in Arizona, studied nutrition there, ended up doing my dietetic internship in Southern California.
Okay.
And, there worked in a hospital, worked in LA County Hospital, and, really got introduced to kind of the world of being a dietitian in the hospital and what that's like. And so
Is this something that exists at every hospital?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
I literally did not know that at all.
Yeah. There's
showing my ignorance here.
Dietitians in every single hospital, and it's there's various roles for the dietitian in the hospital. One of them is to speak with patients directly, and that is a big part of what that internship program was. And so, someone maybe just had a heart attack. They go back to their recovery room and they get their lunch, and then a dietitian comes in and they talk to them about what they're eating and what a diet plan should be for them moving forward. And it's a very complicated conversation to have with someone. They're in the hospital. They just maybe had a major surgery. They're probably on pain medications. They may not even really know what's going on. And you're there to talk to them about their nutrition and diet.
Yeah.
And you have maybe 5 minutes to discuss with them.
And that's not even remotely on their radar.
Not even remotely.
Yeah.
The top three killers, we've got hypertension and diabetes and, cancer. And a lot of these are lifestyle diseases. And, when you get to the hospital because of kind of those lifestyle choices that you're making, it's probably not been on your radar up to that point, right? And so
it was probably you just didn't even know that was a factor.
Right.
That's how I was for a long time.
Yeah.
Just didn't even realize that that nutrition played a factor in any of those things. You just thought it was like, oh, I don't want to get fat, so I'll eat this way to not get fat, not to prevent, one of the big four diseases from killing me early.
Right, exactly. And so as a dietitian, you've got maybe in the hospital, you've maybe got 5 minutes to talk to this patient about their diet. I quickly realized that this isn't really working for people, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be focused more on prevention.
And you were in LA County. We're in LA.
In Los Angeles, in the city.
In the city of Los Angeles,
yeah.
Which would be one of the more health-aware regions of the country as well.
Yeah. Parts of it are, for sure. Parts of it
I guess that's
are
not.
not.
Say it. That's fair. LA's big.
It is big. And, in LA County Hospital, it's a lot of very unhealthy people, for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. What was the overall attitude towards you from the healthcare practitioners at the hospital?
They didn't really treat dietitians as though they were a really great value add.
They're kind of the redheaded stepchild of the medical industry.
Absolutely.
I gotta imagine it would be that way.
But, physicians and nurses, they have, maybe one course throughout their entire education process that's focused on nutrition. And so
Actually, exactly one course. Have you seen the, what was the couple that they recently...
Callie Means?
Yes. Yeah. She was like, she said that exactly, that same thing, when I think she went on Rogan or whatever, was talking about that as a master's or a doctorate or something in like classically trained medical doctor.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I took one class on nutrition throughout my entire schooling.
So our healthcare system is not set up to be focused on nutrition at all.
Prevention.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, working in that setting, I quickly realized like prevention is key. And, how can I focus more on that and have more of a positive impact, on that side of it?
What Peter Attia would say is that prevention is not just a factor, it's the factor.
Correct.
It's our number one defense against any of those big four diseases: the hypertension, diabetes, cancer, one other one that I'm missing. But the number one defense we have against any of those is just prevention or early detection. So how can we get ahead of it?
Yeah, screenings are super important to understand, what's going on with your particular body and what nutrients and food works for you in particular.
Yeah.
But, understanding all that is just so important, and really focusing on what you're eating long term is really, really important. Like the number one, I think, myth that I would say there is about nutrition or eating healthy in general is that it's expensive. I think that if by not eating healthy, it's actually much more extremely expensive, right? Because
medical bills are not cheap.
No, they're insanely expensive. So, focusing on that ultimately long term can save you a ton of money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How long were you at the hospital then?
I was at that particular hospital for a year, and then I transitioned into working for a big healthcare company as a dietitian consultant. And so I worked with all the hospitals in Southern California. And so, every single day was in and out of the hospital and speaking with practitioners, and, really you get a good understanding of how the healthcare system works, and, where prevention is never really talked about.
No, well, it's not profitable for them.
No, no, it's certainly not.
It's much more profitable to keep people sick for the rest of their lives.
Yes,
keep it's adding more prescription medication.
Sick care, as they call it, right?
Sick care. Yeah, exactly. So you get kind of put into this situation where you start realizing, I'm having next to zero impact here. Like, the patients aren't really listening to what I'm telling them to say. The doctors and nurses aren't reinforcing anything that I'm saying. They're just coming in and writing the script and then, bouncing basically. And then I'm just kind of left here to do my job and collect a paycheck and not really feel like I'm doing anything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, what impact am I ultimately having on people? And is this the greatest impact that I can have?
Yeah.
And, quickly realized that, it wasn't. As to what that solution was at the time, I didn't really know, right? Like I knew that I wanted to do something on the preventative side, wanted to focus on that. And, I lived in Los Angeles at the time. And so, I would go to places that are similar to what E+ROSE has become today. And then spent, probably 5 years in Southern California, and then I moved to New York City. And while there, was doing the same thing, working with hospitals throughout all of New York, and continuing to just be like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And how can I have a bigger impact? And one day I was at a coffee shop in New York City reading Howard Schultz's memoir on Starbucks.
Interesting. Were you always a reader?
Always a reader, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, always a reader. And I just thought, like, why is there not an iconic brand like Starbucks that is healthy? Like, why does that not exist? There's all these places in Southern California that I would go that I absolutely loved, and I became obsessed with this place in New York called Organic Avenue, and was just like, why are these not in every major city? I grew up in Michigan, right? Small town in Michigan, and was never anything like that anywhere.
Yeah, it's like there's a Chili's and like a Chipotle,
Chili's and there's Starbucks and there's McDonald's and there's Wendy's and all these things, but there's no healthy brand that really is everywhere, and that is truly healthy, right? Like, you know,
and delicious,
and delicious,
right? Like
absolutely.
that was the misconception for me growing up is that like healthy food isn't just more expensive, like we talked about earlier. It's also just not good, you know. But then that's just a limited perspective. Now I have plenty of healthy food that's fantastic and that I would prefer over junk food. And now I find myself like the thought of eating a McDonald's burger is like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have to be like 2 a.m. and it's the only option, and I'm drunk or something like that. It was like,
yeah, exactly.
Very special conditions to eat a McDonald's hamburger now.
Something that, you know, I grew up going to places like that all the time, and
that was a treat.
And now I can't even fathom eating it.
Yeah,
there's just nothing about it that is appealing whatsoever.
But clearly we're the outliers on that, because McDonald's is not doing poorly.
No, it's doing fantastic, actually, which is, you know, a little scary. But
literally in the car ride over here, there was an advertisement playing in the car. You know how some Ubers and Lyfts, they have that like screen and thing there. There's a McDonald's advertisement, and they always partner with like a professional athlete. I'm like, no chance in hell is that person eating McDonald's all the time. Like, there's just no way. Like, but they're the ones that, I mean, I can't blame them. They're getting a fat check to sit there and eat a burger on TV for 30 seconds. But also it's like that person is not fueling their multi-million-dollar contract body with McDonald's, guys.
You wouldn't think, you never know, but you certainly would not think that that's the case.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make much sense, but you know,
and if they do, it's the treat thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like my wife used to fly, she was a flight attendant for private jets, and she flew the 49ers after the Super Bowl. And, you know, in the private jet world, they always cater the food, and the flight attendants make the food on the jet. It's always something, you know, you can get whatever you want, essentially. Yeah. And so they had their like pre-catered, you know, menu that they had brought onto the plane. And then the players rolled up with a bag of Chick-fil-A mini chicken sandwiches, and then another bag of McDonald's syrup. Man. So they dipped the chicken minis in the syrup, but also it was like the day.
My stomach is churning thinking about that.
Exactly. But it was the day after the Super Bowl. You know, that's what I mean is like when they do stuff like that, it's the treat time.
Yes.
It's not the daily activity, which is what it becomes for most people.
Have you seen the ingredient list on a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich?
No. You're going to ruin it for me, aren't you? Go for it.
I don't know all the ingredients, but it's like over 30 ingredients on just a. You know, you should have like chicken, breading, bun, pickle, right? Like
right.
Even the pickle has like artificial coloring in it. And,
oh gosh.
The bun has, I don't know how many different ingredients. The chicken itself has different ingredients in it. It's like, why?
It just doesn't. They'd engineered it to be so damn delicious.
So damn delicious, yeah. And clearly it's working pretty well for them. If you drive by at any time of day, there's a line of cars wrapped out into the main intersection.
Right.
So,
yeah, but it doesn't really do much for you nutritionally.
No, in fact, it makes you sick, in my opinion. Right?
Damn it!
And, you know, it's always when you're consuming something, either it's doing something good for you or it's doing something harmful for you, and
there's not really a neutral.
Not really.
Yeah, unfortunately,
not really. Yeah,
maybe a head of lettuce. Is it neutral? Iceberg lettuce.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, typically it's more beneficial for you.
Yeah. Okay, so at what point did you say enough's enough? This has to exist other places.
I think it was while I was living in New York, and it kind of just dawned on me, and I was like, I need to do something. I was 29 years old. You know, I was single, no kids at the time, and I was just like, you know, I've always had this philosophy of like, if you look out 10 years from now, you know, and you kind of look back and you're like, I wish I would have done something different over that time frame. And at the time I was just like, you know, I've got this job that I'm doing that, you know, is maybe helping people in some way, shape or form, but it's not ultimately what I want to be doing.
Sure.
And, you know, I was like, this seems like something that should exist everywhere. And, you know, I have a older brother, and, you know, started to talk to him about, just different ideas that I had. And he had his own business here in Tennessee, and I had always come to visit him and would come through Nashville and absolutely loved it here. And so just like, what if we did this in Nashville? It's a place that doesn't really have anything like it.
Yeah.
It's a growing city. You know, if it can work in Nashville, it could probably work everywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Wow.
I've just been slowly,
there's that decade we're talking
growing
about,
it. Yeah, slowly growing it over time. And, you know, looking back on 10 years at it, it's crazy to think about, you know, all of the time and effort that's been put into it and what it took. It's much greater than I ever anticipated, but, you know, I'm very glad that I made that decision to do it.
Yeah. How was your mental health during the hospital days, like 19 to 29?
Yeah, I think it didn't really have like a whole lot of pride, I would say, in everything that I was doing. Like,
kind of purposeless.
It was, ultimately. I think that, you know, working in the hospital setting, like you certainly, I think your intent is you're doing something positive, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like it was up to the potential of what I had.
Yeah.
And I thought that there was more that I could be doing.
Yeah. That's what's interesting about it, man. Like, I assume there's making decent money doing something like that, right?
Yeah. The money was great. The job was, you know, easy. Yeah. It was good at it, right? Like, it wasn't overly challenging, but it's like, then you know, you're like kind of just looking forward to the weekend at that point. And,
right.
And that's
that's never a good position, man.
Not a position that I wanted to be long term. You know, it's like a period of time in my life where maybe that was good, but
people need purpose.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, that was the mistake that I made. I think a lot of my 20s, man, is like I had the privilege and opportunity to set myself up in a way to be able to go travel and see cool places and stuff like that, even in my early 20s and stuff. And over 30 countries by the time I was like 25 or 26.
Incredible.
My country count has not been increasing after kids as much as I would like it to increase.
I have
for obvious
story
reasons,
on the country count when you're done.
Perfect. Yes, let's get into that. But before, I was just constantly going around and seeing places, and every time I would go somewhere, I was like, see, like I love sitting on the beach in the Bahamas, and like, man, that'd just be so cool. And like, and I know the whole, you know, you love what you do, never work a day in your life thing, but also I don't think I would ever choose working over sitting on the beach in the Bahamas, you know? But that was just my limited, you know, young person, early 20s perspective.
I can relate.
And then I started solving for that problem. And so the things that I chose to do were more focused around like, what can I do that optimizes my time and gives me money so that I can do these other things, rather than what can I do that gives me purpose on a daily basis so that I don't have to go do other things to escape the thing that I'm doing to make money on a daily basis. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then it kind of dawned on me in the last really like 2-3 years that I was just like, everything that I ever did was just chasing the dollar. And it's weird because we're on the Travis Makes Money podcast, and obviously I like money. Money's great. Having money is better than not having money. And a lot of people suffer mental health wise because of lack of money, not because of abundance of money. But I always say on the show, money only solves money problems. And then you're left with the problems that money can't solve. And one of those is purpose. It's like, you can have all the money in the world, but if you lack purpose, you know, that's not a person I'd trade places with.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's like when I first started this, you know, you trade money essentially for, you know, this full-time, never stopping thing that it's, you know, we're open 7 days a week, right? And if something happens at midnight, if a fridge goes down or something like that, like it's, you know, you have this thing that you constantly have to take care of.
Right.
But
it's like having a baby.
It is. It's exactly like having a baby. But I wouldn't trade any of it, right? Like I wouldn't go back to easy money. It's like having the purpose is just so much more meaningful.
So the country count thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard the story of Sam Goodwin? No. He was a hockey player, and then he lived in Singapore for a long time, and he was, you know, he would travel to all these different countries, and he got down to like, I think there were 5 or 6 countries left, and he went into Syria, and he was kidnapped by the Syrian government and ended up he was in solitary confinement for like 45 days within a Syrian dungeon.
Oh my
when he was
gosh.
like 35 years old, and ultimately, long story short, was freed eventually, but one of the only people to ever be like freed out of Syria. And just a wild story that I heard the other day, but your country count thing reminded me of it.
What was the guy's name?
Sam Goodwin.
Wow.
He wrote a book.
I'm sure he did.
Really quick read, really great book. Pretty powerful about, getting through something like that.
Jesus. Did they say why he got arrested?
They thought he was a spy. That is
an unfortunate misunderstanding.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. He was like FaceTiming his mom, and all of a sudden it just like the phone went dark and he got kidnapped. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But when he got out, he ended up going to the rest of the countries on his list. Like,
really? Good for him.
A short time later.
Good for him. Yeah, so moved past the fear.
Yeah, moving past it, as we were kind of talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
That's crazy. I guess I'll move Syria to the bottom of my
yeah. So
next
don't
country.
I don't know. You always have to find the opportunities in every kind of bad thing that happens, right? And I think it's pretty powerful. Yeah,
and at the end of the day, man, like, what are you going to do? Just live life, sheltered in your room because there's danger out there. That was one thing. That was one weird thing about being a parent that I didn't expect.
Yeah,
is like. I never got anxiety or anything when I would travel. It was just like, yeah, you travel, you go places. And I would put myself in precarious positions, and I would stay in random hostels in different countries and never think twice about it. And then I had kids, and then now it's like, especially with, all the news lately about the plane crashes and stuff, it was like thinking about jumping on the plane. I was like, is it really that important to do podcast interviews in a different state to where I might die and never see my kids again? Like I go down this like dark rabbit hole, but every time I do it, I snap myself out of it and just go like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Stay in my house forever. Like if I'm going to follow this logic path, it basically means like, well, you better not drive a car because car crashes happen more often than plane crashes.
Exactly.
Like you better just stay in your room. Don't ever do anything. Don't ever risk danger. Don't ever seek adventure. Like that doesn't seem like a good path forward, and the opposite of the example that I should set for my kids. So whatever.
Exactly. I think, having kids during COVID, which I assumed is when you had yours, right? And it's like,
my son was 2019, so he was pretty fresh, and then my daughter was born 2020.
Yeah, my first was in 2022, and it's just in 2020 as well.
Yeah.
And I think just living through that and seeing how people just sheltered themselves and were so fearful, and it's like you see kind of the impacts that it has on children, and it's like you got to overcome that fear and get out and just do things. And I mean, walking down the street, you can get hit by a car. Like it's
right. So what are you gonna do?
The world's a dangerous place, right?
And
if you just sit in your room and do nothing all day, like that's not it's not a way that I want to live, right?
Yeah, it's like you mitigate risk, but you also mitigate happiness.
Right. Right.
It's like what's better, safety or fulfillment?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the business, the money side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at first, you take a massive pay cut to become an entrepreneur.
Massive, $0 negative dollars for a long time.
Were you kind of side hustle guy at first, or did you like quit, go all in, let's start this thing up and do it the right way?
It was, I'd say a bit of a side hustle. So tried to save as much as I possibly could.
Okay.
So for the last even 3 months that I was in New York City, I lived out of my car.
Wow.
To try and save every dollar that I could. And
like just shower at the gym type stuff.
Showered at the gym. Yeah.
Wow.
I would occasionally, sleep on friends' couches and things like that, but had all my belongings in the car and, just was trying to save as much as I possibly could.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about
literally every single dollar that I had into the business, into starting the business. It was just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going all in.
Yeah.
Like to me, I always thought about what is the ultimate downside risk? And I'm like, well, maybe I go bankrupt and I have to live with my parents.
Yeah. And then I get the same job that I have now.
That would suck
in 3 years.
But I could have the same job, come back to it.
Right.
And so, I feel very fortunate that was the downside risk, right? Like not everybody has that, that opportunity.
Live with their parents option. Yeah.
And so, I just felt very comfortable with that. And,
but you also were willing to make the sacrifices necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk personal finance during that time. So like what was like your average month of spending then when you were cutting everything out?
So when I was living in New York, I still had the job that I was doing, and so still had that like income stream coming in. And so I would say it wasn't, as worried. I was pretty tight with things, but at the same time, like, I was just living normally. But once I started the business is when it really just became real at that point, to where when the first store was open, and it was like I didn't do anything. I just was in the store from 6 a.m. until midnight and go to bed for a couple hours, wake up and do it again.
All that for no paycheck.
You're surrounded by food, right? So didn't really have to go anywhere. And had great healthy food all around me, and just did that. It was probably 2 years of just nonstop in there every single day, all day long, and didn't really do anything else. I remember pretty vividly, like that first Christmas alone here in Nashville, and I have a big family, and the holidays are always super important. Everyone always gets together, right? And I was like, no, I can't come home this year. I'm staying here, and just grinded it out for a really long time.
How long before you were able to take a paycheck?
I started taking a paycheck after about 6 months.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Was this all cash funded? No SBA loans or outside funding?
No, the initial startup, my brother is my business partner with it. He put in some capital, and I put in everything single dollar that I had. Yeah. So he, he's more of a silent partner mentor in the business. But he helped to get it off the ground. The retail food service industry is incredibly capital intensive, and you have to have a significant amount just to get it off the board.
We actually started a Everbowl franchise about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay, nice.
Bowl
Yeah.
company. Yeah. So we're
they're
becoming
York,
more
right?
aware of the expenses that go along with a food-based business.
Yeah. The startup capital it's a lot, and it can go away very quickly.
Yeah, well, because the margins are slim.
They are.
When you're putting a good food product out there, the margins are slim.
Yeah, if you're putting out like high quality food, like it's really, really slim.
Right.
Especially, if you want to have fantastic service, like people are also really expensive, as they should be.
Yeah.
And then you've got the rent and electricity and software and website and yada yada, and it's
there's the things that
aren't fantastic.
There's the things that some people are the underrated parts of the unsexy parts of running a business that people just kind of take for granted, when they're just like, well, we should increase the minimum wage to this, or we should increase this to this, and these people deserve this type of money. And it's like, okay, cool, I'm on board. Are you going to pay them that extra money? Because like, I don't have any extra money. We're running on like 15% margins here.
Are you willing to then pay for what the cost of the goods are going to be, right? Like if you bring up the minimum wage to, I think in Tennessee, they were talking about like $20 an hour. It's like,
they're talking about that out here.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
If that happens, then, the price of the food that you're going to go to the restaurant to get is going to go up even higher, because the business owners just you can't make it work. The margins are already super tight.
Right. It's one of those unfortunate things that people, I think, don't understand about the money side. But now the business is doing well. How many locations now?
We have 7 in Nashville, 1 in Atlanta. We're opening up 2 more in Atlanta in the next couple of months, and then 2 more in Nashville.
How do you decide when to open a new store? Is it excess cash? Is it opportunity for a spot that you think is going to perform really well?
It's kind of all the above. We've been very fortunate to partner with some developers that are just really believe in the brand and what we're doing. Okay. And so they've helped us with the build out of these spaces to make it much less capital intensive for us out of the gate. They kind of view us as an amenity for their buildings. They're not making money necessarily off of us. It's really off of their office tenants. So, they kind of use us as hey, we have a E+ROSE in our office building. And
right. It's a value add for their client base.
Correct. And so, we've been really fortunate to just partner with these developers that have some incredibly phenomenal buildings that, kind of fit with our brand and the, you could call it like a cool factor in hipper parts of town and things like that. It's where it really meshes well.
How do you view personal finance now?
It's one of those. Have you ever read the Psychology of Money?
No.
Morgan Housel?
No, I haven't.
No.
I probably should.
There's this paradox within it called like the man in the car paradox, where it's like if you see a Lamborghini that goes by, no one's thinking about like the guy that's driving the Lamborghini. They're thinking about the car itself. And so, kind of you view personal finance in that sense of like, I don't need any of these luxury items, right? They don't do anything for me personally. And so I think we're super conservative with how we live. Obviously, I think that food is like the number one most important thing to spend money on. I think long term, it's the best investment that you can possibly make. I think that it makes you happier, it makes your family happier, it makes your family, healthier. I have 3 kids. Not one of them's ever been on an antibiotic in their entire life, which is like incredibly rare. So we just value different areas of where we put our money differently.
What about like investing or retirement, or like where do you put excess cash when you're paying yourself? You got some money. Where do you put it?
Yeah, I was fortunate to put some into crypto several years ago.
Nice.
Try to diversify as much as I possibly can. Some in the market, some into crypto, some into savings, some.
Okay.
I try to diversify things as much as I possibly can, and then really putting it back into the business.
Okay.
So we're adding this year alone. We're adding 5 locations, and so.
Wow.
It's kind of,
wow.
I took that first step 10 years ago because I, really just believed in it. And I think this past year, we really kind of doubled down on everything that we're doing. And
almost literally double.
Yeah, it literally is. It literally is doubling the size of the business and, just putting it all back into it.
Yeah.
I think, again, started to think, all right, in 10 years, what am I going to wish that I did?
Yeah, right.
And so, kind of by default with that too, you have to be pretty conservative because it's the margins are so slim, but we really believe in it and think that it should be on every corner.
Right. Yeah, that's a hack to know who's going to do well and who's not going to do well, is when they speak in terms of decades rather than terms of months or years, and that's a fantastic frame when it comes to success in any field, really, but especially money. It's like, what will I have wished that I did in 10 years from now? And I should probably do that. Like, what will future Travis thank present Travis for in 10 years?
Yeah. And it's the, compound interest, right? Like, and if you're
the eighth wonder of the world.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that 10-year time horizon is really like a good metric to look at. And to where things can really start to compound. And
right.
It's like we double this year, right? What can we do?
In
the next 5 years, next 10 years, and what can it look like at that point? And, we took a huge leap to go to our first city outside of Nashville this year, into Atlanta. And, it was just very anxiety ridden, right? Like,
no kidding.
Is this other city going to understand who we are, what we're doing? Like, we've been here 10 years, have really built up just this passionate, amazing following, but is Atlanta going to understand it and get it?
Sure.
And it's our number 1 store, like out of the gate.
Wow. No kidding. Yeah. That's crazy. So the 5 stores, are you putting some more in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of them are going in Atlanta?
No, 2 more in Atlanta.
Okay.
And then we're going to continue to do more here in Nashville too.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Do you have any idea for expansion beyond that?
Beyond Atlanta, the plan's to kind of work backwards. So we see Chattanooga as
okay. So kind of like fill in the gaps between here and Atlanta.
And, we want to stay regionally within the Southeast for now. But ultimately want it to be everywhere. I've got family back in Michigan that's been begging for one. I've got some family in Cleveland that's begging for one.
But
it's prioritizing how to make it work from a business standpoint.
Sure.
Because we do everything to really, really high quality, high integrity, high standards, and so if you get too far away to where it becomes hard for me to get there, for our team to get there, it makes it that much more complicated.
You're going to keep it corporate then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Eliminated the franchise model from your mind?
Yeah. I just, you're bringing on a lot of other people into the conversation at that point. And, you can be super selective in who you choose in the franchise model, but at the end of the day, like, you're trusting people that you really can't ultimately know that well with your brand. And I think that you weigh out the pros and cons of it. Is it probably a faster way to grow? I think 100%.
Yeah.
But there's some downside to that too.
For sure.
And I've seen a lot of brands that, juice bars in particular, that have gone that route. And, it's like, oh wow, they have 50 locations now. That's crazy. And then 2 years later, they're gone. They're out of business. And again, I think it comes back to that long-term mindset of, what do we want this to look like in 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that frame, man. That's a fantastic frame to look at it through. What are some common mistakes about money do you think that most people are making?
Common mistakes. Setting priorities with it, right? Like, do you want to purchase really good food, or do you want to have a really nice watch? And it's like, I think if money is limited for you, just making sure that you have your priorities right with what you're doing, and thinking about not that immediate gratification that you might get from a purchase versus like, what is this going to do for me over the long term? And is it something that, is going to provide more value for me long term, or is this like a short term new t-shirt that,
right.
that I'm going to wear twice and then toss it, So that's something that I look at for sure.
Building anything of importance is going to require sacrifice in some regard. So get used to it.
Absolutely. I think, the sacrifice is always there. And if you are comfortable with it, it can be very powerful for you too. And
it's part of what makes the achievement worthwhile. It's like, it's not having money that's the goal. It's kind of the attainment of it,
right.
Which is why a lot of these trust fund kids are miserable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you're just handed everything, I don't know. It's working towards that goal is part of what makes it so great.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the journey, right? Not the destination. And, I think with every new location that we add with our business in particular, it's like, I feel just such a great sense of accomplishment with it, because I know how much blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get it to where it is today. And
sure.
It just has so much more meaning, You can relate it back to kids too. It's like when you see them doing something for the first time, whether it's walking or crawling or whatever, you watch them to when they couldn't do anything, and put in all this time and effort and care into it. And it's it just makes it so enjoyable to see it.
Robbie, thanks so much for doing this, man. Before we take off, where can people go to find more about you?
You can go to our website, www.eandrose.com, and we're on Instagram at @E+ROSE Wellness.
And that's with spelled out, E and Rose?
Yes, EAND.
Got it.
Yeah.
So on Instagram, at E+ROSE Wellness, and then eandrosewellness.com.
Correct.
Great. Dude, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Everybody else, if you're coming through Nashville, if you live in Nashville, go check out E+ROSE Wellness in Atlanta as well, E+ROSE Wellness. Go follow them on Instagram, check out some of the stuff that they got going on. As always, remember, money only solves your money problems. Then you're left with the problems that money can't solve, but it's a little bit easier to solve those problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that one first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace.